This is part two of a special edition of Everyday Lessons Now with Dr. Amala Luncheon and Jaiga. Some people believe, like last night, a guy brought up, I think it was Miguel was his name. He said,
Miguel asked us,
he said, it feels I guess the atmosphere in the room and how the conversation was flowing him. Do you guys think that emotional intelligence is something just for
is a luxury?
It's a luxury for some people.
Uh-huh.
And I found that really interesting because
I too.
he was kind of right. If you're not careful with how you describe what it is, it could feel like that because you're telling yourself that, okay, I will get emotional intelligence when I have these things. First, let me just get a job. Secondly, let me make some money. Thirdly, let me live somewhere decent. And after all of that, then I will seek some emotional intelligence.
Right. Yeah. And I liked when he likened it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm like, wow, I never thought of it like that before. But then immediately we both went, no.
It's not that at all.
It's not that at all. But for people who are in that space, let's just remind them. So in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, on the bottom, so it's like a triangle for those who don't know. So it's like a triangle, and then on the lower level, so at the widest base, the first thing that you want to satisfy are your physiological needs.
Sure.
So you want to make sure that you're neither hungry nor thirsty.
Yeah,
so you get something.
You have some food to eat.
Yeah. You have food. Then in the second level would be your safety needs. So you want to make sure that you have a roof over your head and, so roof over your head and you're not hungry and thirsty.
Right.
Then in the next tier, you're looking for belonging and love. So now you have a family, you belong at work, you have a significant other, you want to avoid loneliness and separation.
Right.
So it's still, you're building on that. Then at the next level, you have esteem needs now. So now you want to achieve something, you want to have independence, you want to be recognized, you want your peers to know who you are, that sort of thing. Then you have that and you figure, okay, well, now what can I do for myself? So now you're thinking of self-actualization. So you want to live up to your potential. So, when I was younger, my mom told me that I could be a pilot or I could
I want to be a pilot now.
Something. What's that?
So I want to be a pilot now. Now it's time to be a pilot.
Right, exactly. So, you get up there. And then the last one is self-transcendence. So, you want to leave meaning and a legacy and something beyond self, so you really like up there now. So that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So what Miguel was asking is, listen, would you say that this is a luxury? And he really was playing devil's advocate because he's doing psychology now, and he had a really good question, but you're not at all. You really don't have to have all these things and then add emotional intelligence, but I'm sure that you can understand now how having emotional intelligence would help make a lot of those things so much easier. I think that understanding where you are in the space in your life and understanding how to deal with others helps you to lessen that burden that you thought you had. You had a question, Colin?
Yes, I sure do. And I want to tell you, I'm enjoying your discussion. I think it is so enlightening. And I mentioned to you before that I've taught adults and students character development and life skills.
Right.
And one of the things that I try to impress upon the so-called powers in the school district, who administrators, superintendents, and so forth, that if they took a proactive position when it comes to kids and how they relate to others, all they needed to do was to set the fundamentals in place, set standards in place. And 90% of the adverse and negative activity that went on in schools and in homes would have been decreased. It would have been minimized. But the idea was that in the schools, especially here on the West Coast, the A through G element was far more important than how kids behave.
Okay.
The fundamental aspect of their life was not that important. I had people to tell me they didn't need social skills. I had administrators to say they get that at home. There's no evidence that they get it at home. How could they get it at home when at one particular school, 70 to 80% of the student body were kids who were in foster care and in group homes.
Right.
So it was next to impossible for them to get the standards and fundamentals of life and living from a group home or in foster care, because the state doesn't care that much. And as you talk about how people can minimize negative behavior, activity, or how they're feeling, and as Terrence said, write it down. Those are things that unless someone is already ingrained in this activity, they're not going to
know that.
They're not going to introduce that to their students. I've had teachers in elementary school tell me it was unnecessary to introduce college to elementary school kids. And if they're not going to introduce college, if they're not going to talk about college, going to college, they're certainly not going to talk about social emotional learning, because they don't have that. That's not in their purview.
I think a lot of interesting things came out last night for us, because while we are looking at schools and being able to talk to teachers about it, teachers are frustrated and teachers need help. And one of the things that a gentleman too, and when we start to get frustrated male teachers, it begins to be a problem. This gentleman said to me last night, one of the things that I am not happy about is the fact that children can get a 50% grade, even if they don't do well.
That's right.
So what you're doing, and I wasn't aware of it because I'm not a teacher, but he said, you're failing people forward. So students are going through the system thinking that they're a C student, and really they're, as he said, an E student. And so you're not passing anything, but you're being promoted through the system. And then you get a grade enough that you can get into a college or university. Then when you get into that system and the professor hands you an F, you don't know what to do because you have not been prepared.
That's right. That's absolutely
right. And that, again, he said, this is where that self-awareness comes in, because if a child knows I am a failing student, maybe lower in the ranks, they could have got some help. But when you get all the way up now and you're shocked with this failing grade, then that's an issue.
And do you know that happens somewhere between 75 and 80% of the time? That when kids get to high school, they think that they are an A student. And what a lot of people don't really realize is that an A in one particular area may be an A, but that A may be a C in another area.
Correct.
Indeed.
Okay. So, and it really depends on where the dynamics are. And in major school districts, they don't want to recognize that because it's not that important.
Right.
And remember, social promotion is a real thing.
Right. Yes,
I have witnessed it more often than not. And social promotion is a real thing. And now all of a sudden, as a matter of fact, I laughed with my boss a week before last because he was asking everyone on our team if they went through the social emotional training. And I said, yeah, Dr. G, I tried to teach you guys that a decade ago and nobody wanted to do it. And now all of a sudden they're throwing it in everybody's face and everybody thinks that it's something new. And it really isn't new.
And that is the thing that is interesting to me, because I know that it's not new. I know, how long it's been around. I've had to do the research to arrive at where I am. But, the fact that we're still, I guess though, because it's being presented in a different way.
That's it.
Or because for us, we're talking about it and I look like the people I'm talking to, then, it has a different feel.
And
We
And
ought to
to,
be cognizant of it.
and to the times
Yes,
of
sir.
change, you realize that it's way more important now because the conversations have gotten different because of what has been happening socially as well, especially within the last 2 years. Remember, we've been stumped with a pandemic. We've been stumped with undertone of I should say Black awareness in the United States. So things like that.
Not really an undertone, but okay.
Well, when I say undertone, I
I know
mean
what you mean.
me,
No, go
me,
ahead.
me here as a West Indian looking from the
Right,
outside.
right. Oh, absolutely.
Looking from the outside. You say it, I say it that way. I'm trying to be politically correct in how I say it because what has happened now has happened in generations before mine.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't there to see it. But what I am witnessing now in my time, it's that swell that is happening. And because of that swell and because times have changed and because of
And you're
social
seeing
media.
it in real time.
And you're seeing it in real time. It might appear as though the social conversation is new. But it's not. It's only because it's in your face now every corner you turn. And because of digital analytics. We talking about it now, so when you turn around, you're going to see it somewhere else, then you're going to see a story here, you're going to see a story there.
Yes.
That's the only reason why.
Emotional intelligence thing keeps coming up.
Exactly,
Like,
because of analytics.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why I say, in the past 2 years, you will feel as though, and people then start to realize how important it is. It's like always carriage before horse, and it's and in the West Indian culture, we suffer that fate all the time. You hear your grandparents say, "You're putting carriage before horse." It's like you want to do something. Everybody wants a nice job. Half of the time, nepotism gets it for you, and then you can't do the job
Right.
because you're not qualified to do the job.
Right.
You understand? And that's an excess.
And it's now incumbent upon everybody to be involved in social emotional learning. But I can't say that it's late, not too late.
Right.
Yes.
We have to find, as we like to say, you need to get comfortable having difficult conversations.
Uncomfortable
Because
conversations.
we have to be able to just talk to people about things that we find are off-putting. And I had a great example today where someone, and this is in St. Lucia, and another question that our vet friend asked last night is, if a reporter is local, is that a local reporter? And it took me a minute, but then the answer is no, because if you're a local reporter, if you live in let's say Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, and you're reporting on something and you have an audience that lives around the world, then you're no longer a local reporter.
You're just a reporter reporting from a location.
Yes. And that it was interesting to me. And I saw something this morning on social media where he's an artist and he usually does caricatures, digital caricatures. And if someone dies, he would do one. And it's usually comforting to the family and so on. And there was a young guy, he was 23, who was murdered recently. And this guy, he's an art teacher. He did it. And someone posted, "Oh, well, I guess I have to die to get one of those." And some people saw it. I didn't see it. But then our teacher wrote today saying, this is what happened. And I just want you guys to know that when I do it, it's for this purpose. And I commented saying, these are the types of conversations that we need because people are just not self-aware. And just to let people understand that sometimes you really need to, as your parents always used to say, think before you talk.
Exactly.
And so social media, people get there, you're not seeing them. And so they just want to write whatever it is. And, they may be using a sobriquet. And so you don't know who it is. And they feel empowered that they can just say things and, with no consequences. So I really did applaud him for coming out, and defending himself and defending what he does and letting the person know this is not the forum for that. And so having that social awareness too is what would allow him to make a comment like that. And I hope that the message got to the person that he intended for it to get to. But that was a good example of, the sort of thing we talk about in action. And it gives me, impetus to go on with what I'm doing, because there are people who need to hear that some things are just not appropriate. Some things are not appropriate. There was another question that was interesting too last night. Does emotional intelligence increase with age? And while we were quick to say it doesn't, I mean, you'd like to think that, people acquire experiences as they grow older and they're able to get to a point where they understand certain things and they shouldn't do certain things. But, we also constantly hear that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And, all the adages that we have in the Caribbean and the world over. But we do know, I found this study where there were 405 American people between 22 and 70 years old, and there were 249 female and 155 male used in this study, and they ranged between 31 and 60. They asked them a bunch of different questions and so on, and what they found is that age really did not play a major role in whether people became emotionally intelligent or not. And what they wanted to highlight was the fact that emotional intelligence could be taught. So at any age, you can learn something that is going to make you more emotionally intelligent and puts you in a situation where you can, function better within whatever group you find yourself in.
And so, as you said, that takes me back to one of the reasons why the title of the book was so important when we say everyday lessons in emotional intelligence, Caribbean perspective, because West Indian people have been, certain things have been engraved in their mindset. As we like to say about the old people, they stunt in their ways. There's certain things you can, we always say in the Caribbean, you can take a horse to the water and you can't force it to drink. West Indian people have this way, that's how it is, and they're not changing their mind. And I honestly believe that emotional intelligence could be taught to a 17-year-old person once Absolutely. They are willing and understand that. And what I've been seeing, though, in my personal space is that they're willing to change because they see the world is changing around them and it's getting harder for them to operate.
Right. And I would probably use my dad as an example because he's in his 70s. And, when I started this emotional intelligence thing, he was very curious. Because your child is studying management and then now emotional intelligence, and I had him along every step of the journey, I'm telling him these things and so on. He's like, wow, and understanding now how it could be helpful for him and how it helps him relate to people in the church and at home. And he and I have a good relationship, as he would call and we would talk about different things and so on. And that's not a relationship that I had as a child. And it's so different, I like to say, and I like to use your relationship with your daughters as an example, because they talk to you in a way that I didn't talk to my dad when I was a child. So for me, those are things that you can actually see and make changes and understand how you affect people or how people are affected by what you do or don't do.
And for the benefits, go ahead, sorry.
I was done with my thought.
And for the benefits of the listeners, I have a 12 and a 7-year-old, and Dr. Amal is correct. I have been, unbeknownst to me, teaching them emotional intelligence from birth. And now that I am a little more versed and trained in emotional intelligence and still on my journey of learning and getting better at it, I try to instill what I know to them, like just how they communicate. Like I always tell them, take a step back. And they both operate social media, meaning they both operate phones, so they know how to WhatsApp, and they will send me detailed messages of how they're feeling if they want something, as opposed to having a tantrum and just carrying on and crying for no reason. So I can't remember within the past, say 3 to 4 years, having seen them on a crying fit. And I thank God for that. I've not seen a crying fit. What I get is pushback. A lot of tell me why, you need to explain, I need to understand why this is not happening. I get a lot of those. So I encourage and employ anybody listening here, just try it. Try having a real conversation with your children. It's about separating, I always say it's about separating parent from child. It's about understanding friendship and being a parent. You can't be friends, but you can have a relationship where your child is comfortable enough to come and have a conversation with you. Yes, there needs to be a level of superiority where they have to see the separation, where I have to respect this person because this is my mother or this is my father, but I can still go to them with any issue. and have a conversation. And you too within self need to understand when to be hard, when to be soft, and how that works. And that is about being self-aware and always checking yourself too, because we had a discussion recently. It's been coming up quite often this past couple of weeks when we talk about West Indian parents and why they used to hit. And we figured out, I realized after doing some research, I realized that I'm having long conversations with my mother and trying to let her tax her brain around as to why you used to do it. And it's so funny when you see them stumped, they can't answer. And when you give them, you remind them of a situation.
Yes.
You remember when I was in Form 1 and and they're giving you a story and they're looking at you dumbfounded, what are you talking about? And then you have proof to say yes. You remember auntie was here when you did it and you made me and and you then walk through the entire day, because as a child those things are traumatic. You remember, most West Indian children, I'm sure any West Indian person listening here, a day you got licks.
Yes.
You understand? I will give a quick story about one that was really, really bitter for me. And I speak on it now because that's not who she is. Luckily for me, things my mother did is not who she is today.
Right.
It was a case where I had chores to do, some things I needed to do around the house. And as any boy, a boy at 10 years old, come on. Yeah, I'll get to it. And in getting to it, two of my friends said, hey, we go into the savannah. Right? Because it was Easter time. Easter time is when it's windy. That's in Caribbean culture, that's when you fly kites. It's kite flying season is around Easter time. So that's March, April, around there. So I see them passing by me with kite in hand and football in hand. Where are they going? Going in savannah. And where we used to live, the savannah was around the way. It wasn't 5 hours walking distance. So I done tools. I done tools. I was doing what I was supposed to do, but I seen people going, so I done tools and I went. So my back was turned, kite in the air, laughter in the air. I having a jolly old time. Life is good. It's Easter vacation. Woo woo. This is life. In the distance, I'm seeing my god brother at the time running. So I waving why you running? He keep running further and further. And he pointed, look, auntie. I said, what are you talking about? Before I could catch myself and turn around, my mother is up on me with a stick. When I get the first lash of the stick, I was like, whoa, what's this going on here? And her response is, didn't I tell you to clean up whatever? So I was asking her recently, what the licks was for what? Being defiant or not cleaning? She said, I can't remember. The licks was because I look out and I didn't see her. You understand? So the only response was to do that. And I said, you see, that's the problem right there. Parents or people with the West Indian parents operate in a place because their parents used to do that. She knew once she didn't do something, the alternative was that. So she believed in growing her kids. That's what she was supposed to do. And it's so easy if you just take a different approach. In that same scenario today, I'm not saying I wouldn't go to the savannah, I'm going to go to the savannah. But I might go to the savannah and say, listen, you had stuff to do. You didn't do it. You're here. All right. So the consequences of that is, in this now world, is that you have no internet privileges for the rest of the week. You cannot get your iPad. It now belongs to me. And things like that. The phone that's in your pocket right now, can I please have it? And I will sit patiently in my van and wait for you to finish your whole play session and say, well, okay, I'm waiting on you. And now, yes, the consequence of you doing that, my day now is now cutting short because I'm here waiting on you. So continue playing. So when your playtime is over, you sit in the car with them. I'm then going to drive you back to the house. You're going to finish what you're supposed to do. And when those shows are done, every luxury that you had 2 days prior, the day prior, a week prior, you now lost it. I didn't have to lift a hand.
Right.
You understand? I didn't have to inflict trauma. But the message was there.
Yes.
And I guess this is what emotional intelligence is. Back then, we didn't have these conversations. So a young parent here now listening in the Caribbean, if you're from the Caribbean or anything and you're listening, you're like, okay, I never thought about that, because you feel as though, because when you latch your child, because I can tell you this, and I've been honest, okay, I got licks, I went home, I finished clean, but the next day I did the same thing.
Because you know it will pass.
It will pass, and
It will
nothing.
pass. The pain will pass.
The pain will pass. But understand something now. Because in the now world that we live in, you take the devices from the children, you have deep conversations with them, and show them exactly what it is going on. You're gonna get a different response because you now have buying power. Parents now have more power than they had back then.
Absolutely.
Way more
Absolutely.
power. My parents didn't have power because they weren't as savvy. Because I got licks, but I went back out because I was enjoying the road. The only way for me to not to do it is to actually stop me from going out entirely, which is a different scenario. We had those moments too, and then is when you really, we call it rest and reflect. The rest and reflect because you had to think about, hey, boy, you're really not going to go to school bazaar? Yeah, you're not because you did something wrong. You understand? But now I think it's so much easier for parents to connect with their children once they're able to be self-aware, as we say, and understand what needs to happen.
One of the things I like with how my sister-in-law parents my nephew, the same one who knew that he was not sad, but he was confused, she would say to him, use your words. So if he's upset about something and, he's going to cry or whatever, and, he's not saying anything, she says to him, use your words. So this way I understand precisely what it is you're feeling and what you're thinking and whatever. And I think that that's a great way to get children to be able to identify what they're feeling. And then once they can identify it, then you can help them manage it so that you understand, this is not something to throw a tantrum about, or, okay, well, mommy just didn't understand that this is what you meant or whatever. So I whenever she says use your words, I love it. I always commend
Some parents listening might be upset with me, but we have to also admit as parents that we could be wrong. We get it wrong sometimes. You do.
When you say use your words, is there an age where that is applicable? Because if I say that to my granddaughter, who is 10, she really thinks she's 21, however. And she told me this afternoon, they were talking to me about being on TikTok, and she told me not to go on TikTok and steal her thunder. So she's very good with her words.
Right.
But the other little kids are not as well versed.
Right.
So when you say to younger kids, use your words, isn't it difficult for them to express themselves? And
if you have a child who is articulate though, and
sure,
because usually when she says that, and I mean, I think I probably first heard it when he was probably like 4, so maybe like 3 or 4. So he understood exactly why, he shouldn't be like crying or sulking in a corner or whatever. So tell mommy what is wrong,
Use your words.
Yes, use your words. Tell me what it is.
It's something you have to teach. I
can't read your mind.
It's something you have to teach them. When you start from early. When you start from early saying it, it helps because I get what you're saying. A 1-year-old can't use words.
No.
They can't. No. But if they're crying at one constantly and you are aware of how to deal with them. You see, some parents, they get flustered in the crying. So in the fluster, they'll be like, oh my God, can you stop? Da, 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 da. That's not the approach. If you are calm and you can say, okay, dad is listening. Talk to me. I know you can't answer. You can't really articulate what you want to say. But by the time you get to 3, when you could form your words, you will then know, okay, once we sit down, once you're in a cry mood and you see dad sits with you or mom sits with you, you two get calm. You might not have words you can then point. Because children are bright, and they're very, and they might say, well, okay, the reason I was crying is because I want this. Or they might hold your hand. They're gentle. They're soft with you. You have to be soft with them. And that's how you move. So at 2, they hold your hand. They might walk you into the bedroom. They might look at something, go touch it. And that is their way of talking. So when you say use your words, you have to start from early. So by the time they get to 10, I'm fortunate. I have 12 and 8, and they speak well. They call and say, "Listen, Dad, this is what I want," and they say what they want. And I'm thankful that I had the awareness early on, and I had good people around me, so I had the opportunity to know from early. So I'm not struggling now. So this is why what we're doing now, our journey is so important. It's all about educating people and getting them the help that they need to navigate their everyday life.
Right. Well, in the areas in South Central Los Angeles, especially, and in parts of the Dallas and Houston area, my experience has been when you say to youngsters, use your words, if all they know are the words that they've heard their parents say,
that's a different conversation.
then you have a problem. And you know what? Earlier today, I saw a group of people in a motor home, and there were quite a few adults, and then there were kids, and I saw two kids, and these two women were, I guess they were playing with these two little boys. Extremely inappropriate. These were women who used the term grown you know what woman, but they were playing with these two little boys. Well, the little boy did something with her phone, and she turns to him and she said, I'm gonna beat your ass. She said it about 3 times. And this little boy, somewhere between 8, 9, and 10. And I thought to myself, how could you as an adult, and that's not new, and that goes back to the social emotional learning.
Right.
Because if this is the life that they're living, the social emotional learning that they need, the healthy part of what they need, they aren't going to get it. They are not going to get it because they come from a place where it isn't necessary. Does that make any sense?
Lots of sense. Lots of sense.
They come from a place where it isn't necessary, and that's a travesty.
Yep.
All right.
And I noticed we're at the we
1 minute
here
mark.
really quickly. My goodness,
I told you it goes by fast.
yes. But I got a comment here from someone who says, well, sadly, we have to stay far, especially what they experience with women in power leading a male team in a male-dominated industry. That is something that I would like to address, because he's talking now about emotional intelligence, and Taryn and I spoke about that earlier today, where women, how women emote differently. So
we'll save that for next week. We'll talk back on it next week. So whoever sent that message,
today,
hold on.
I kind of wanted to go through some of the comments and the feedback that we got, during the week, and just address some of those, because those are the things that people are thinking about when they hear about emotional intelligence. And so on Everyday Lessons now, we're going to talk about those things. We also want to talk a little bit about finance during one of these sessions. We also want to talk about what being a futurist means and change management. So it's not just about emotional intelligence, but really it's everyday lessons. And we want to think about the things that would affect people that look like us. We want to talk about things that would affect college-going students. We just want to be helpful to our community, because when you're given a lot, you should also share a lot. And so that is the position that Taryn and I find ourselves in. So thank you guys for tuning in tonight, or if you're hearing this on a podcast later on, thank you for listening. And we're going to stay abreast with the questions that you have and try to answer those. And you can reach us on social media at Everyday Lessons Now, on Twitter, on Instagram, and our email address is everydayLessonsnow@gmail.com.
Thank you guys so much. Catch you all next week.
Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you next week at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us right here on the Intentional Talk Radio Network. And you have been listening to Dr. Amala Luncheon and Taryn Callender with Everyday Lessons Now.
That was the end of our 2-part series. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Check us next week for a brand new episode of Everyday Lessons Now.